Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for Everything Solar, or Going Solar, I think we're doing tonight. Whatever, Everything Solar, Going Solar. My name is Dee Dee McDowell. I'm the residential energy leader with Sustainable Westport, working with the co-directors Gately Ross and Joanna Martell. I've been in Westport for 34 years, along with my husband, Tony. I've been in residential real estate for the last 18 years and recently got my green designation from the National Association of Realtors. This is the third and final presentation in our residential energy learning series. We first did heat pumps and then geothermal, and tonight we'll be discussing solar. So I'm excited to announce our panelists. First one is John Roundtree. John is an architect based here in Westport. His practice, Roundtree Architects, specializes in net zero residential architecture that integrates solar energy and passive house principles. John was founder and principal of Westport Solar Consultants from 2006 to 2014 and designed commercial, institutional, and residential projects, including the Westport Firehouse and the Saugatuck train station. John was a founding member of the AIA Connecticut Committee on the Environment, and in 1995 was appointed to serve on the National COTE, or you say COTE?
Committee on the Environment.
Thank you. Steering Committee. He has published numerous articles and has lectured extensively on the subject of photovoltaics in architecture. John lives here in Westport, Connecticut. His house derives 85% of its electricity from a 5.4 kilowatt roof integrated solar photovoltaic system. Woo! You go, John.
PV, it's called PV.
I want to make sure everyone knows what it is. And besides, it's a good tongue twister. He drives a Chevy Bolt EV and charges it from roof integrated PV panels on his garage. Chris Lenda, president and founder of Aegis Solar Inc., would be speaking next. Aegis Solar Energy has recently acquired the CT operations of Sunlight Solar Energy Incorporated, thus creating the state's largest independent solar company. Aegis Solar Energy designs, installs, and services systems throughout Connecticut. Chris is a lifelong Connecticut resident and a father of two. He is a renewable energy industry veteran with more than 30 years of experience designing and installing PV, battery storage, and energy management systems. Jim Wolf is our final panelist. Jim grew up here in Westport, graduating from Staples High School in 2001. In 2018, he and his wife Lizzie, also a Staples graduate, bought an antique Greens Farms home built in 1790, which they have restored and remodeled with a focus on sustainability. Impact-oriented modifications have included window replacements, insulation, oil tank removal, an outdoor vegetable garden with open-air composting, and now most recently, the installation of solar to cover the majority of the house's annual consumption. Jim has 3 children at Greens Farm School and volunteers as president of the Westport Soccer Association. Each presenter, including Jim, will give a brief presentation. Jim, our resident in action, will discuss firsthand his experience with installing a PV system. And then we will allow time for plenty of Q&A at the end. So if you could please hold your questions, that would be greatly appreciated. All right, let's get on with it.
Well, listen, it's great to be here. It's great to be in the company of Aegis Solar and a homeowner that's going to share about it. I also have a client in the back that is about to do a really cool system using Tesla. And I'll be talking about that in a minute. But I'm just grateful to be here. I've been, as Dee Dee mentioned, I've been doing solar for many years. I started out in the 80s in school when I was in college, and nobody was doing it or interested in it at the time, and it's suddenly grown, and it's become more and more a bigger part of my practice. And now, as you mentioned, I do residential net zero energy homes, which use solar to create the power for the home. So I'm going to talk kind of in general terms. I'm assuming a lot of people are beginners at this, so if you're not and you know a lot about solar, please forgive me. A lot of it's going to be sort of PV 101. for those that are considering solar. It really is about educating people. And I showed this slide first because in 2012 I hired a student intern from Staples, Matt Brill, to do a study of the houses in Westport that could support a solar system. And he basically, using Google Earth technology, he came up with this map showing all the homes that had south-facing roofs, that had very little tree shading, and could support a system, and he actually sized each system for each house. He came up with a total of let's see, 1.4 megawatts of solar on the existing residential homes in Westport, and I'm sure right now that would probably be double, considering the newer houses that have huge roofs and the efficiency changes. But I thought this was a really interesting study. It didn't get involved with commercial buildings, but now there is great technology where you can do mapping. You can map whole towns for the solar potential. So I'm going to talk about just some basics. So if you're considering putting solar on your roof, there are a few things that you want to look at. Is your azimuth, which is if you're looking at a certain roof, you want to know which direction it's facing, right? So generally speaking, you want a south to east to west facing roof. You generally don't want north facing roofs because there's very little sun on that side, but somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 degrees east or west of true south. You can go out with your phone now and figure that out really easily. The tilt angle is another thing that impacts these are things that impact the production of the solar. So the tilt angle has in this climate, roughly 35 to 40 degrees is optimal. It doesn't mean your system won't work at lower angles, but it's the optimal tilt angle. And Everett Barber, great guy that retired a few years ago, did this chart to see where he plugged in those two factors, the azimuth and the tilt angle, and he came up with 35-degree tilt angle at 180 degrees is the optimal location for solar panels. But that doesn't mean they don't work. They work all over now. There's technology now with the inverters that allow you to put solar panels on east and west facing roofs. So that shouldn't be a hindrance. Although I will say shading it can be an issue in this area. Shading is something you want to look at. Roof shading can affect the production of panels dramatically. If you're looking at a roof, you want to look at the roof in that 3 p.m. or 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. period to see how much shading is on the roof. However, there are inverters now, I'll be talking about that in a minute, which will minimize the shading. But shading is a factor. Obviously, panels in shade do not work well. These are the basic grid PV components in a system. You have your panels. Your panels are DC devices, so they produce direct current electricity that has to be conditioned through a device called an inverter. That inverter converts DC to AC. That then goes into your panel, your main panel, and it will, depending on how it's configured, it will power the loads that are on that panel at any given time. If it's producing more power than the house is using at any given time, it will export that power to the grid, and you will get a credit for that. Your meter will actually run in reverse. Funny story, when we first put our first system on, it was before they digitized meters, and we had the old meters with the wheel that would spin, and the wheel would be spinning backwards, and I would take my kids out to show them that, and they thought I was crazy. They go, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Look, it's spinning backwards, we're selling." They didn't get it, but now all the meters are digital. It's no fun, you can't really see that anymore. But inverters, these are different types of inverters, different sizes. Usually you size an inverter based on the kilowatts size of your system. You can gang these are inverters in our house. They're 3 kilowatt inverters. There's usually a disconnect there, and then there's a utility grade meter. This is a utility grade meter which measures the AC output of the inverters, which I'll talk about in a minute. but they come in different sizes. They can be mounted indoors or outdoors, but generally indoors, usually in a basement next to your power center is the best location for them. Inverters now can be mounted to the panels. So these are microinverters. Microinverters are mounted to each panel, so each panel operates as an AC appliance and generates AC. So the nice thing about that is each panel operates independently, so any shading, any partial shading you get on the roof will only affect the panel that's being shaded. And you can also, on your smartphone or iPad or whatever, you can actually see the production of each panel in real time. So if for any reason a panel goes out or goes dead, you can identify that panel and replace it. They also, almost all systems now have data acquisition, meaning that you can see the production of your system in real time, in daily output, weekly, monthly, yearly. So you can see how it does, how it does over the course of the year. And if there's a problem, you'll see it. You should be able to see it on this program. Most systems now are being mounted under rails. This is called a standoff rail mounting system, which is sort of a standard. They come in different types, but basically you're mounting an aluminum railing that runs perpendicular to the roof. It gets mounted to the roof using stanchions that are bolted through the roof into the rafters. I have never heard of a roof leaking. That doesn't mean they can't or don't, but in my experience, I've never heard of a roof leak. If these are done correctly, you shouldn't have any problem. But they do, yeah, so but this is sort of the standard way that panels are mounted. These are a couple of projects I worked on. This is on Turkey Hill Road South. This is just to give you some sense of size of the system, this is a 5.2 kilowatt system on a barn. This is a 5 kilowatt system on a house. A lot of the panels now are uniform in color, usually black, and they reflect the sky. So this panel is actually black, but because it's reflecting the sky, it looks blue, so it changes. Mounting panels on metal roofs is very easy, using a railing system that clamps onto the splines of the stainless steel roof. This project is on Campo Road North, and it's basically designed the roof. He designed the roof to try to be close in color to the solar panels, so it blends very nicely. Another option is ground mounting. If you have a house or a property where you can't mount panels on a roof for whatever reason, for shading, you can do a ground mounted system, either fixed or operable. Some of them actually have trackers that track the sun. These are fixed ground mount panels, and then basically you run the power through a trench to your house. So if you have a lot of property but you don't have a lot of roof, then that's a possible option. This is a house I designed on Campo Road North. It was completed in 2016. It's a 7,000 square foot house. It was designed to be net zero. Their average electric bill is $30 or $40, and it's got a 10 kilowatt PV system. So it uses a combination of super insulation, triple pane windows. All these houses that I work on usually use heat pumps for heating and cooling and for hot water. And this house is a great example in Westport, and it's right on the road. You can see it it's right next to Staples High School. This is solar panels. This is the mounting system on that house using rails over a standing seam metal roof. This is my house when we bought it. In 1996, we bought a 1910 farmhouse on Campo Road in Galt Avenue, and we ended up putting I think it was may have been the first solar system in Westport in 2001. It was a small system, and it was mostly a demonstration, but it had battery backup as well. So it was it worked great. It was the first one, and I was proud to be the first PV owner in town. Then in 2006, we did a pretty major renovation of our house. This is what it looks like now. And this system uses a Schuco Synergy roof system. So these panels are built into the roof. So they actually function as the roof. And they combine solar electricity and solar hot water in one system. So if you look at this picture from drone shot, you'll see on the main roof there's a 5 kilowatt system with a solar hot water collector system, which are the three panels kind of in the middle. It looks slightly different in color. Those are flat plate solar collectors that heat up water. And so that was done 2006, and more recently we renovated our garage on the lower left with a 2 kilowatt system, which has a battery backup. I'll show that in a minute. So this is what it looks like today. This was when they installed the panels. The panels are raised up off the roof to allow air circulation below. Solar panels do best when they're cool. So ventilating panels or having the standoff racking systems allow air to move under the panels, but they do actually best when it's cold. So actually cold sunny days when you get reflection of snow, they produce the most power, and people ask about snow, what the effects of snow is. If you have a reasonably good pitched roof, snow will melt and slide off the roof usually the same day if the sun comes out. And in our house, it usually crashes down on our kitchen, and my wife yells, "What happened?" Because it will all slide off at once onto the roof, and make a loud bang. She thinks it's a bomb, but they do slide off pretty quickly because the sun will penetrate the snow and warm up the surface of the glass, and it will slide. These are our inverters I mentioned before. These are 3 kilowatt inverters. There's always going to be an outside disconnect, which is it's redundancy, but the utilities require that, so that if there are line workers working on it, if you're having a power outage and there's line workers, they want to be able to shut your power off. Even though it is redundant, the inverters are designed to shut power off from sending power onto the grid in a power outage for safety reasons. This is the hot water system. I won't go into detail on this, but only to say that because heat pump hot water heaters are so much more efficient right now, if I were doing the system again, I would have put 3 additional PV panels on the roof and had a heat pump hot water heater instead of this system. This is a old-fashioned flat plate solar water domestic hot water heating system that heats water basically like if you think like water going through a hose. It gets hot. It's like pipes under the glass. So you send glycol through it. It heats the fluid, and it goes through a heat transfer in a solar tank. I won't get into it, but it works really well. I gotta say, it's still working. We have it. It works great. We get about 80% of our hot water from this system. This is our garage, which we renovated in 2012. These are semi-transparent solar panels, so they let light through. I have this is hooked up to a Xantrex inverter, so this system has a battery backup. So we just basically use the batteries when we lose power. The batteries feed power through the inverter into a sub-panel. And we run our emergency loads, which is basically refrigeration, a couple lights in our hot water system. If anyone has been to the Nomad restaurant, they use a very similar product in the roof, semi-transparent solar panels. So it's kind of a cool thing. It actually heats the garage. On a sunny day in the winter, the garage will get really warm just from the sunlight coming through. And I also charge my electric car. I calculate I get about 30 miles of driving from these panels on average a day. I know I'm going fast. These are Tesla inverters, and there's an expert here on those. If you have questions, I can point out. I'll fill in the back. So building integration, as an architect, my fascination has always been in how to integrate the technology architecturally. so that it looks like it belongs on a house. And, you know, we attempted that with our house. There have been a number of systems that have attempted to integrate solar into roofing. This was one. This is Unisolar. It's no longer in existence, but it was around for a long time, and they were able to have sort of what I call a peel and stick solar panel that would lay into a standing seam metal roof. This was another product called the SunSlate, again, no longer in business, but it had a very interesting aesthetic that was similar to a roof shingle. So this is what it looks like on a historic home in Massachusetts. So there have been a number of products out there that have tried to do this. More recently, I just found out about this product. This is Solstice Shingle from Certainty. I literally found out about this last year, so I'm just throwing it in. I don't know any details about it except that it's, again, a product that's attempting to simulate an asphalt shingle roof. I don't think it does a good job, personally, but I thought I'd throw it in there. However, this is the Tesla roof shingles, which actually do look good, I think. I think aesthetically, you would agree that this, you know, from a distance, you probably don't know this is a solar roof, but it is. Tesla is beginning to market these systems in Connecticut. I'm actually working on a project right now. My client's in the back. I can talk about it also. And you know, for a roof like this, for a roof, you know, with a hip roof, there's no way to make rectangular panels look good on a roof like this. There's just no way. And they don't make panels that, at least not in this country, that can form the shape of this roof. So the Tesla is by far the best solution for this roof. This is the house I'm designed for my client Scott Herman, who's here. It's in Norwalk. It's on East Avenue. It's under construction, and fairly soon it will have a Tesla roof. And this is the roof plan. So, looking at the roof, you can see we looked at two different options. One was to use traditional panels on the roof, and the other was to use Tesla. And basically, Tesla generally uses all roof surfaces when they put in a roof. So they realize that, yeah, the north side you're not going to get as much sun, but it's, you know, the cost of the solar cell versus the metal dummy cells is comparable. So it doesn't really make sense to do like a metal roof on the north side. You still get production from it. You get power from it. So they tend to cover all roof surfaces when they do these systems. It's more expensive, a lot more, but you know, and if aesthetics are your concern, and many people are concerned with aesthetics, then it's something to consider. These systems are basically the same size in terms of wattage, 10 kilowatts, 11 kilowatts, so they're basically the same size, but the Tesla roof was the right choice here. I'm going to skip that one. So those are my slides. I'll throw this up. This could be way off, but I threw in an economic profile just of a 5 kilowatt system mounted at 40 degrees without any shading. You know, the cost range now for anywhere from $3.50 to $4 a watt. I chose $3.70 a watt for this illustration. So the install cost is about $18,500. There's a 30% federal tax credit that's going to go for another 7 or 8 years, I think. So that reduces the cost by $5,500. So the net cost is $12,900. Estimated production 6,696 kilowatt hours a year. 1875 savings makes the payback around 7 years. They're exempt from property taxes in Connecticut, and there's also an additional rec payment, which I'll let the other guys talk about. But this is, I mean, I guess what I want to say is most systems, if they get a good production, should pay for themselves in 7 to 9 years. So that's kind of the economics, and the next presenter will probably talk more about that in more detail. But okay, I've used up more than my 20 minutes. I apologize, but I'm done with my part. I'm going to bring up.
So I'm Nathan Hernandez, and this is Chris Lenda. He's the owner of Aegis Solar. And I'm going to let him talk a little bit while I get set up with the technology, and I'm going to show you guys some interactive site designs and also some of the projects that we've been working on. So Chris, you want to just take the floor while I get the technology ready?
Sure, Nathan. So hi, folks. Yeah, as Nathan said, my name is Chris Lenda. I'm the president and founder of Aegis Solar Energy. It's a company that I started back in 1989. And I look in the mirror and I'm like kind of surprised to see what I see, you know. But
Still look good.
it's been a long time, 35 years I've been doing this. So I've seen a lot of change and a lot of innovation and a lot of changes over those years. Nathan is a relatively new with our company. We acquired our closest competitor here in Connecticut, which was Sunlight Solar Energy, and we were glad to have Nathan come along. So
I've been 14 years doing solar. Started in New Jersey. Let me talk to the mic. So I've been 14 years doing solar. Started in New Jersey, back when it was just innovators getting solar in New Jersey, and then I've been selling solar here in Connecticut the last about 8 years. And fortunate to have Chris acquire Sunlight Solar, because Aegis is a 34-year-old company that just does a great job with solar installation. So what I'm working on now is getting this set up so we can show you guys some of the site designs. So give me a couple more seconds and I'll get it.
So one of the, a project that we recently completed was an interesting project. You know, back 30 years ago, or longer, basically all of the projects that we did were off-grid. Almost all of the solar projects were off-grid. We actually did some of the first grid-tied systems here in the state, but back then almost all of them were solar and battery component. A recent project was actually an island called Dodges Island in Stonington, and the customer, it's a 12-acre island with 2 homes. They have electric hot tubs and electric pool heating, and you know, geothermal and heating, and 2 homes, desalinization plant. And the island is actually served by mainland power. There's an underwater cable that comes from the mainland, but the cable is about 45 years old. It's getting to the, you know, it's getting to the point of where it's going to start failing, or it could fail because it's exceeded its lifespan. But the customer was interested in basically just taking the entire island off-grid. So that's exactly what we did with this island. This island is now, the cable has been severed, and the entire island is off-grid. So this is a 400 amp service that's serviced only by solar. Right? In the wintertime, because of all the heating loads, there's no one out there, but there's still more than 40,000 watt load on a cold day. And there's nothing servicing this island but solar. That's it. So
How many panels? What's the system size?
the system is a large system. It's 300 panels, right? 420 watt panels, and 7 15 kW inverters, right? So it's a substantial system, and there's almost 400 kilowatt hours of battery storage. Yep.
So this is the batteries here.
Yep.
Wow, okay.
And all of this is just, you know, everything was custom made. All of the bus bars, I mean, everything was basically custom made for this particular project. So it's, just so you have an idea of what's actually capable, because people will ask, well, can I run, you know, whatever, a refrigerator or a hot tub or something on my solar? You know, yes, absolutely. You can basically run anything. It just depends on the size of the system.
A lot of people think that you need batteries to get solar, so just so you know, you don't need batteries. Thanks, we have net metering here in the state of Connecticut, and due to net metering, the grid is basically your battery. So you don't need batteries. You can get solar standalone. The only problem there would be if there's an outage, you lose power. Just like I think John was talking about for that emergency cutoff, and it's for protection of the lines. Someone's working on the lines and there's electricity going back out. So now there's an emergency cutoff. So you no longer have energy if there's an outage. If you have a battery backup, you don't need one this large. But if you have battery backup now, you continue to run off-grid on your batteries You're continuing to have solar generate power and feed into the batteries. Now, obviously, you're not going to have this size of battery backup, so you'll be limited on what you can run, but you can theoretically stay off grid. In Texas, during that huge outage, my mom's down in Texas, and there were many homes that had Tesla, and they stayed off the grid for that whole week when it was freezing there in Texas, and it was a good thing. If we think about the hurricanes and different things that come through here, batteries have gotten more and more popular, and they're continuing to become better priced and better incentives. The state just kicked in a better incentive, which we can discuss as well during the Q&A if you guys have any questions. But I just wanted to throw that out there because you don't need batteries if you want to get solar. That is something that's available though that we do. And something I really appreciate about our company is we can become creative with how it needs to be done. And we will specialize or customize that to each homeowner to your needs. And you might just need a small battery. You might want a large battery. So it just really depends on your needs.
Many of the projects that we kind of gravitate toward or specialize in are projects that no one else would even touch. So, but those are the ones that I find the most interesting and that we have the most fun with. So, what's, yeah, bring up the other ones. So one of the things I just wanted to touch base on and talk about was the trend toward convergence, right? We see this real convergence of technologies happening right now, right? So this is a typical solar app that basically all of our customers get, right? That they would be able to see exactly how much power their system's producing, but they can also see exactly how much power their home is consuming, right? What the status of their batteries are, right? There's also a little icon here for EV charging, because all of these systems are now integrated, right? The EV charging, you can program the EV chargers, they're smart chargers, to program only from solar. You can program them to only charge at night. A myriad of different parameters that you're in control of, right? Just by clicking on it and telling it what to do. In addition to like all of these other kind of smart home devices that are now being integrated into all of these systems. So it's really not just solar anymore. Solar is becoming a whole complete energy system, one that's includes energy controls and how you use energy and when you use energy, and the ability to see exactly what's going on 24/7.
And then something that we've been looking at as well is smart panels. We have the old dumb panels, electric panels. I think smart panels are also becoming something that's a lot of homeowners want, because then you can control basically what's happening with the energy in your home. You know where the loads are going. And you're wondering, why was it $1,000 this month? And you actually can log in and you can see, oh, that's what it was, and old appliances or whatever. Now you know where your energy's going and you can control that. So I just love the smart home idea, Chris. So did you want to talk about anything else there? I just jumped in to show the...
No, I think the Q&A was really where we'll be able to answer your specific questions. But do you want to wait till the end?
I'd like to ideally,
Okay.
yeah, just to let everyone
Sure.
know. Speak.
How much time do I have left to show them a quick little...
Don't give them a lot. It's going to keep going.
I'm a talker. What I wanted to show you real quick, because a lot of times people want what numbers and cents, like what does an electric bill look like when I have solar? So this is an actual electric bill, a bill of one of our clients. I have access to the online login here. This is just a screenshot of it. And as you can see, like if we go back, you can see April of 2023, okay? She was using energy. This was probably after she got installed. So she used 200 kilowatt hours. Here's her bill, $80. But then solar was installed, and now you'll see a negative number of kilowatt hours used. So then you'll see credits onto her bill. There's a credit there, $35. Another negative, this is the kilowatt hour usage. And it continues just to keep going up, negative, negative, negative. So theoretically with solar, during the high season is right around April, May, you start seeing more production. Also, our usage goes down here in Connecticut. We open up our windows. We're not running so much air conditioning. You don't need pool heating, none of those things. So you're having a lower electric bill, more solar production. And because of net metering, that just goes in credits. Previously, they would give you a credit of kilowatt hours. Now they actually give you a credit, a dollar amount. So whatever they would have charged you, now you're gonna get a credit on your bill. So if you go down to the end of this one, you'll see her credit on her bill went all the way up to $300 in this month, then it went down to $200, and now as of the month of December 2023, I think she had a little charge on there of $140, and all that is because she probably used more energy that month. But that's an idea of how your electric bill would be, and if we have a system large enough that offsets all your energy, you would theoretically not see an electric bill anymore. From Eversource or UI, whoever. Is it Eversource here in Westport? Okay. But there's also a little payment that they give you above and beyond the net metering. I think it was 3 cents a kilowatt hour. I think it just dropped down to 1 or 2 cents. Eversource dropped the incentive. So above and beyond the kilowatt hour net metering, there was also above that they give you like 3 cents per kilowatt hour, and I think it's 1 cent now. So offset the bill plus 1 cent per kilowatt hour as a credit, and they'll pay that to you, and those are called the renewable energy credits, and they'll sell those back to you or give them back to you on a quarterly basis. So you'll get actual payment sent to you. You have a portal that you can log in to receive that payment. So one more quick thing I want to show you is an actual site design. So let's just go over here, and I'm going to open up a site design that we were working on recently. This is one that I did myself. This is a software that we use called Aurora. You've seen it well up there, good. And what's really cool about this software is that it gives us LiDAR mapping. So I'm able to see, if you give me an address, I don't have to go to your home like I used to and get up on the roof and put a sun eye up there. I can actually see the height of your roof, the pitch of your roof. Now I can even zoom back and I can see trees, so I can see where the trees are. So as you can see this, it'll even give me a sun path. So I want to say, where's the sun at here in this site? So when I click this, it zooms back, and now I can see, okay, here's where the sun is, and then I can even go to like the month of January when the sun's low in the sky, and I can see, okay, here's what it's going to do. And what this does is it kicks back a calculation, and it tells me how much production you're going to get in the month of January, in the month of February, in the month of March. It goes through the full 12 months, and it kicks back this chart. So this is giving me a very accurate chart of what those 23 solar panels are going to do. So in this situation, someone asked how many panels, right? So this would be 23 405 kilowatt panels. So let's just do 23 times 405. So we're looking at a 9.3 kW system, but it doesn't produce 9,300 kilowatts. It produces, as you see there, 13,176. But this is a really good site. So when we look at that site, it's almost south facing. It doesn't have really too many trees. So it's not like one size fits all with solar. We've actually got to kind of look at the site and kind of get a good calculation for what your home's going to do. So I'm sure you'll have questions about this in a little bit, but that's just to give you an idea of how we can go in depth and see what solar would do for your home. We don't charge for these. Just we go in, we can look at it and kind of give you a full educational experience and kind of tell you what solar would do for your home. And if it makes sense, great. We'll talk further. If it doesn't, no problem. At least you did the investigation if solar is a good fit for you. So kind of an idea there.
Just to simplify this a little bit, for my own home, I pay $9.65 a month. And $9.65 a month basically represents the meter charge. Right? That's the only charge that you really can't eliminate, right, with net metering. You can eliminate it if you actually generate a little more than you consume because you get an extra credit on your electric bill. But it's because you built up credits with extra kilowatt hours, not that you're actually eliminating that charge.
Thanks, Chris. So thank you guys so much. Just a little breakdown of how solar works. And hopefully that was educational for you. And if you want to talk one-on-one, we're available to talk as well after the meeting or whenever you guys want. So thank you so much. Answer questions as well.
we'll be back.
Thanks everybody, Jim Wolf. So I installed solar about 3 months ago. So I installed solar about 3 months ago. My family, we moved here in 2018. As mentioned earlier, grew up in Westport, graduated from Staples in 2001, when we moved back, we bought a home that was built in 1790. So it's a historic home built on, so it's the Jennings Farm. It's on the corner of Greens Farms and Rustic Road. So it used to have more than 50 acres going way back. In 1950, thereabouts, the patriarch of the family passed away and sold the farm to a developer, and then they broke it into even 1 acre lots. But our house continued to exist at the very, you can see it right there, at the corner of Greens Farms and Rustic over on the Fairfield side. So, as mentioned, moved out here in 2018. In 2019, we began a renovation on the house. All right, so did the renovation in 2019, family of 3, so we needed a little bit more space. So here's the original farmhouse. That faces Greens Farms Road right here, so that's the south-facing roof line to build on what John and the others were talking about before. And here you can see it again, Greens Farms Road, south-facing roof line on the corner of Greens Farms and Rustic. So that's after the renovation, and we did some other things to improve the energy efficiency of the house, switched out windows, insulation. We did the garden in the back there. And then here we have composting, which Greens Farm School was targeting a net zero basis. So they were composting, so the kids started composting during COVID. And then we got an EV, and then I started to think to myself, well, it's actually a plug-in hybrid. But we bought that, and then I was thinking, okay, well, it's great. Well, I have a plug-in hybrid. I can do 35 miles off of charge. But I'm still charging it off the grid, which is a mix of, well, I'm not sure exactly how EverSource breaks down, but yeah, it's a mix. So then I started looking into solar, coincidentally, right around the same time. Thank you. Coincidentally, right around the same time, I was looking at an investment in a solar installer in LA, so I started to get more familiar with the unit economics of solar and started to get educated on it. So here, this is fun if anybody ever wants to play around on it, but if you type in CT aerial photography resources into Google, you can see just area maps, and they're all in a library, in Yukon Library or something. So this is 1934, so it's just to illustrate what I was describing. So just farmland all around it. That's our house there. That's our neighbor's house. You can see it still exists there today. She's very involved in Sustainable Westport, and you can see the corner of Greens Farms and Maple here. So same structure. You can switch.
What was that website? CT what?
So yeah, what I typed into Google was CT aerial photography resources, and I think there's older photos too than 1934
I
photos.
use it all the time. 34 is the earliest.
Yeah.
You can see Westport without the merit. They've got a set in 52, 61, maybe like 75. So you can see how your neighborhoods have changed over the years.
Yeah, pretty interesting. So actually, if we could go back for 1 second. Yeah, so we're trying to consider how do you put solar on a 1790s home and maintain the character of the home is a major consideration of ours when we were thinking about doing it. And here you can just kind of see all the roof lines that we had to play with after we did the construction. So I talked to PurePoint Energy. I talked to some of the solar companies. Like if you Google and you get lots of hits, and I think they sell to local installers. They're kind of lead generation businesses. So I wanted to try to find a local business. So I talked to PurePoint, who was recommended. They put together a big design plan. We picked these roof lines, which are not exactly the optimal roof lines because we're not using the south-facing roof line here. And the reason we did that was we didn't want the panels to face Greens Farms Road and our neighbor's house. So here you can see the array that they did. We chose Maxeon panels, which are pretty pure black panels. They'll reflect the sky. And we did 58 panels across the whole array. So you can see here what it looks like when it's done. We had recently redone the asphalt shingle roof there. This is the basement, so you can see 2 SolarEdge inverters right here, which I put right next to our electric boxes. And then here you can see the Generac box. So we do have a generator, which we actually hooked up around the same time that we did this. And part of the consideration, I'm sure these guys are better to talk to during Q&A than I am, but the consideration was that I think the technology was evolving still very fast on the batteries, and they're kind of expensive relative to generators. And also when we had done the project previously, we had put all the piping in for the generator to put it on the back of the property, so we were already invested in it a bit. So we did the Generac, and then it all just hooks in and it all works together. Next slide, please. All right, so you've seen this already. So it's SolarEdge. This is the data. I'd highlight some data you get off it. So production by panel, as mentioned earlier by John, so you can look at it daily, monthly. You know if a panel's offline, but also you know what your best panels are because they show you the production for each one of them over any period of time, which is kind of interesting to look at. And then that physical layout just tracks the roof lines. That's facing west, that's facing south, and then nothing facing south on Greens Farms Road. And then over here you have, this is just showing the monthly production. So I had it installed in the middle of October. Days are shorter in December, so less production in December, also a function of weather. And then, what else would I call out on that? You can look at the daily production, so I put some of the daily production in Excel, and then you can see the trailing 30-day totals, which really highlights a bit of the seasonality you get, because you're going from 1,200 down to 900 in December, and again, some of that's a function of the weather. But when we got our system spec'd out, so the system was for 26,000 kilowatt hours. When we had it spec'd out, they effectively did what they just guys were showing, where it's dynamic relative to the seasonality. It's just not flatlined. So you know you're getting pretty reliable data. So they put these lines on here in SolarEdge, which is the production relative to the estimates, as explained to me by them. So you can see how it tracks, and it's all tracking reasonably well. And then also, so we talked about the RECs earlier, which are 2 or 3 cents from Eversource, which you get on a quarterly basis. And then you can look at your Eversource bill and just see what the variable cost per kilowatt hour, which is the amount over the 10 bucks that you basically get charged regardless to be hooked into the system for net metering. So I think it's about 31 cents. So yeah, 27 cents plus the 2 or 3 cents. So an easy rule of thumb is just to look at your production and you divide it by 3, and that's basically, you know, the value of energy produced in a day. So here, 62 kilowatt hours, so that's like 30 bucks of energy produced that day on one of the better days shown in the range. And then again, so net metering, so in November, I got a credit of about $40, and then in December, we were on the grid a little bit more, similar to the client that he showed the data for. So I think our bill was about 100 bucks. But yeah, so great, it's easy to track the data, look at the productivity. And next slide. All right, so this is what I did on the front end before installing it, and I had a lot of this information from looking at investing in that solar installer. I wanted to better understand the unit economics. So this shows 10 years, but the model, if it continued out, would run for 30 years. So you can see the 26,000 annual kilowatts produced by it, and then you project out the degradation of the panels and you can look at, and you can project out the annual increase in energy, 31 cents. You can say I'll increase that 2.5 cents per year, or 5% per year, whatever a reasonable assumption is, and then you can look at your initial outflow. We bought our system, we didn't look at financing options, and look at the IRR and payback on that. So this, based on these assumptions, energy only increasing 2.5% per year, and then modeling in the degradation, and then the dynamic production. So it's actually, it should be a pretty reliable number, the 26,000, because they look at the weather patterns and what it produces, what it's produced over time. You get a 14% return on it over the life of the system, which is tax-free, obviously. So if you're buying a 14% dividend stock, you have to pay dividend yielding stock. You have to pay tax on that. So what's your tax affected yield on it? Maybe 8 to 8%, something like that. But you're going to get this 14%, and then the tax incentives are stable as well. And I think they were just recently refreshed, so you net that out up front. And the math is pretty easy, and it actually comes out to a very similar number with respect to the payback. So about an 8-year payback. In my opinion, off of somewhat conservative numbers, because I think you can argue that the cost of energy would increase by more than 2.5% per year, which would just be upside to the IRR. I think that's it. Oh, and then it was easy. It was an easy process. Took about 9 months, and the town has people who are very responsive on it as well, which is super helpful. So probably, very easy. PurePoint was great to work with, and lots of great options here in the area for solar installers.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Johanna Martell. I'm one of the co-directors of Sustainable Westport that has put together this learning series. So before we jump into everyone else's Q&A, I just wanted to see if we could cover this topic, because we didn't really get into it, I think, from the presenters. But does one of you want to walk us through sort of the different options of ownership or financing? Because I don't think we got too deep in the weeds, and I just want to make sure we're all in the same.
I can talk about
Great.
that. So as far as ownership of solar, there are a few different ways of getting solar. You could purchase it cash. You're going to get your 30% tax credit. There's also financing, and the state of Connecticut has a state-funded program called the Smart E-Loan. So that'll probably be where you're going to get your best interest rates in these crazy days of high interest rates. But we also have other third-party solar loan companies that we could get you a financing with as well, and those go from 5 years up to 25 years. But then another option would be a third-party ownership, which is a lease. So there are companies like Sonova, Everbright, there's a few other providers that they would own the system. So it's third-party ownership. They own it, and then basically they sign you up for a lease. It's normally 25 years, and a lot of them, what they're doing is just you're purchasing the energy at a discounted rate. Is it the best option? Not always. I think only when you don't have taxable income and you can't benefit from the 30% tax credit, that may be the route to go. Third-party ownership, or they call it a PPA, a power purchase agreement. Well, with us paying 32 cents a kilowatt here in Connecticut, you could get your energy cost down to maybe 20-something cents a kilowatt hour, 25 cents, maybe a little less, with the lease. So I don't advocate them as much, but they are available. Does that sound about right, the different options? Okay, so there you go.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're
All right, let's jump to questions.
And is it possible to get solar panels on a flat roof?
Absolutely.
How does that work?
There's systems that are designed for flat roofs. They're usually they're ballasted for residential. So they're ballasted, meaning using concrete blocks to support them, and they usually have a very low pitch angle, a tilt angle. But you do have to get your roof analyzed to see if it can support the weight, because it does add weight to your roof. But yes, there are systems for that. Yep.
There is a type of racking for flat roofs that doesn't have to be ballasted. I was just talking with Elliot about it. It's a different type of racking that would they lay flat or they're just a little at an angle?
Sometimes flat, sometimes a little.
Okay. So there is, you wouldn't need the ballasted, so they're not as heavy. So there are different options in case you can't have that load.
Pretty much any roof. I mean, any roof that you've seen, we've put solar panels on. I mean, we've built solar arrays into the sides of cliffs that are solid rock. So, and whether it's flat roofs, wood roofs, shingle roofs, anything. The biggest impediment to solar panels are dormers, right? Any kind of roof penetrations, and trees. Well, they don't really stop you from putting panels in. They just stop them from producing power.
In the back?
Yeah, what's the likelihood I'll have to replace my shingle roof before I put solar panels on?
I can answer that. So, if you're putting solar on your roof, right, you can expect the system, I mean, at bare minimum, is going to be lasting at least 20 years, right? But realistically, even longer than that. So, it could be easily 30 years that solar panels will continue to produce power without a problem. If your roof needs to be replaced in 5 years or even 10 years, it's probably not a great idea to put solar panels on them. The area under the solar panels will kind of freeze in time and it won't age, right? It'll age very slowly, but the shingles around the perimeter will continue to age at a normal rate. And it's not inexpensive to take the whole system off and put it back on. I mean, it's basically building the whole system all over again. It's just even harder because you have to take it all apart and put it back together.
I have a question for Mr. Wolf. Your generator that you were talking about?
Yep.
Is that for storage or is that for emergencies?
Just for emergencies. So if the grid is down, then the generator will kick on.
So it's a battery, I'm assuming?
No. It's a propane tank. So the propane
okay.
tank
I thought it
feed.
was.
Yeah. So the
I thought it was
propane.
tied to the solar system.
Yes, the propane tank feeds the house, feeds the pool system, and then the generator.
But your solar panels, will they operate if the grid's
Solar panels
down?
will not operate unless there is a battery component, right? So with his system,
Without a battery.
the solar panels are connected to the utility side of the generator transfer switch. Literally just disconnected along with the utility when his generator comes on.
If I was a residential homeowner and I needed a new roof, and it was X amount of dollars, could I include that cost of the roof for my federal tax credit?
I'll let Chris answer that question.
Well, the IRS says no. So it's not eligible for the 30% tax credit, right? So do people do it? There are companies around, I guess, that do that, but it's not exactly legal.
I guess we should talk to our accountant.
I always say talk to your accountant, but also like if there was a section of the roof that's being repaired for the solar to be installed. So you're talking to your tax consultants and all, but I've had people do a certain part of the roof where they did the section where we're putting the solar, that half, and I was told it did. But again, we're not tax professionals, so that would be something to talk to your accountants about. So there are certain applications where it may work.
Jim, did you guys just replace your roof prior to putting in?
Yeah, we did it at the same time we did the construction project.
Yeah.
So the cost of doing the area, you guys might have more experience with this, but I think the cost of doing the area under the panels, if we were to only do that, would be maybe an additional 10% of the cost of the overall system, if I had to estimate, if we had only addressed those panels and not the full house. Or the shingles under the panels.
Go ahead,
John, I think in your presentation you mentioned you had 3 companies or products that were no longer in business.
Yeah.
How important is service after the installation and the sale where solar is concerned?
So you mean in terms of the warranty?
Not just the warranty, but will people actually show up to fulfill the warranty if they're no longer in business?
I'm going to defer this to these guys. They deal with it.
So after,
You've done 4 systems in your home.
Well, those companies are out of business. Like the roof that I put on was a Schuco roof. That company no longer exists. So I don't know what, and it's been 10 years, so,
Doesn't matter.
I'm still working though, so.
Yeah.
You're supposed to work 30 years, so I'm still good.
the landscape is pretty interesting in solar. I mean, most of the companies from back when John did his system, or even, over the last 35 years, I mean, we're talking not dozens, but literally hundreds of manufacturers that are no longer exist. There's equipment all over Connecticut that just manufacturers no longer exist, right? Unfortunately, SunPower is going out next, so and that's just the manufacturers, right? Manufacturers, it was a real bloodbath a few years ago, manufacturers dropping like flies. But the same is true in the installer market, right? We're 35 years, I've just watched companies come and go, huge companies. Companies come in, set up shop, they're here for a few years, they literally have hundreds of employees. And bam, close their doors overnight, fire everybody, and leave projects in all different phases. So,
on the flip side, it's the fastest growing industry in America.
no. So I can tell you that we are inundated with phone calls from customers, who call us all the time saying, my system's not working. We have, XYZ who put our system in, and we try to help, but honestly, 90% of them we turn away. We just don't have the capacity. And our goal is to focus on our customers and our installations.
I would just add one point. So when I was making the buying decision for our family, what was important to us, and I think which is why we use PurePoint, which is they focus more on commercial in the area. That to me just they had a lot of depth to their organization. They do a lot of projects. They do larger projects. That doesn't mean they're more likely to be solvent 5 years from now. I have no idea what their capital structure or their balance sheet looks like, but I took comfort in that as a consumer of the panels. So it was helpful to me, at least, to have them and their professionalism, and they've been operating in the area for a long time. So that made my buying decision a little bit easier.
Say if your company goes out of business, call us and we'll fix it for you.
That's right.
No, just, yeah, well, for a fee. Just choose Aegis Solar, you'll be no problem.
Yes, ma'am.
Jim, when you did your renovation, did you do heat exchangers and pumps and electric heating as well?
I think if we were doing it now, we would have very much considered geothermal as well. So it's something that we'll look into and probably spec out a couple years down the road. But we always had an idea that we wanted to try to do solar. We like the messaging to the kids, and they talk a lot about it at elementary school. So it's great. So we wanted to try to bring that home. Yeah, sorry.
Jim, how much of a percentage does that system provide you as far as your entire load is concerned?
Yeah, so based on the dynamic production model, which you saw there, so I would say 70 to 80% is what we should get. So right now we have 6 people living in the home. I think if you project it out a few years when kids leave for college and all that, it should be covering almost all of it, I think.
Sorry, but was that, and you also mentioned, I think, 85%. So is that kind of the standard? I mean, you don't go for 100 or 90 or 95?
Yeah. So my thought on that first was, So your IRR is going to, or your return from the system will be the same if you go, substantially similar if you go a little bit smaller, because it's all about the production and the offset you're getting for the size of your system. So you don't need to go huge to get a good, well-bounded return on it. It's really just thinking about, okay, well, what's the right sizing for my house? And I think if you go too big, you could be just producing too much, and you'll be racking up Eversource credits, and I don't know what you can do with that ultimately.
So just really quick on, I size systems all the time, and I look at each homeowner and I look at your historic data. So like if I could look at 1 year, great. If I could look back 5 years, even better. And then I'll talk to you like, are the kids leaving? And have you done any upgrades? Heat pumps? Did you just purchase an electric vehicle? Yeah, we just got two Teslas. Okay, you're gonna just go up 6,000 kilowatt hours to drive those vehicles 12,000 miles a year. It's like we know these things, and the heat pumps, and then we'll look at all that, and we'll say, okay, here's what you just used. You used 12,000 kilowatt hours the last 12 months. You just purchased an EV, so you're gonna go up another 3,000. So let's try to size it for 15,000 kilowatt hours. Can we do that? Let's look at your roof. You got trees here. We'll size it. We can get you at 90%. Okay, that's what you'll get. You know what I mean? If I ideally like to size it to 100 personally, about 105%. I like to go up over. Everybody's using more energy these days, and they're continuing to go up, unless your kids are moving out or whatever. So I would, if we have the room, we will try to size it so that you won't have to be paying much of an electric bill ever anymore. So.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify a little bit about what I had said earlier. One of solar systems in general have proven to be the most reliable appliance or component of anyone's home. I mean, the failure rates of panels are so low, it's almost non-existent, right? So realistically, what we've seen and what we deal with is that most of the reliability component has to do more with the installation quality than it does with the components, right? So we do run into, and that's really where we see the problems from, old installations, not so much because the companies aren't manufacturing the panels anymore. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of companies around, that no longer exist with panels that still work and will work for another 20 years reliably, So that's not so much the issue, right? And in most cases, even if there is an issue, like, if you have a reputable company, we just come out and fix it, right? We replace it. We even have a whole stock. We keep panels from 20 years ago, so that we have one or two, right, in case. And the only times that we've actually really needed to replace a panel is because, we had an old guy drive his tractor into the array, and or a baseball, hit one, or but it's. I mean, we have arrays. There's an array that we built on an island 20 years ago, and it's right on the ocean. It's built into the side of a cliff. The seagulls take clams this big and fly up and drop them on top of the array and smash it. It sounds like, the first time I heard it, I thought somebody was smashing Coke bottles against the cliff, because that's what it sounds like. And they just roll off and land on the dock, and it's clams on the half shell, and those panels have been there 20 years, and none of them have broken.
Yeah, I was just going to make one additional point on sizing. You recall the picture that I showed which showed different panels have different production. So what we aren't using is the south-facing roof on the front. So we could have really, tweaked up the production per panel by using that south-facing roof line. But I think also what you could do is, when you're speccing it out with folks, is look at, okay, how much more in panels does it cost me to get to that 100%? And you could stop where you're optimizing production per panel based on sun exposure.
I just want to add too, that if you haven't had an energy audit done on your house, you should definitely do that. It's basically free, I think it's $50.
Yeah, the price just went up.
Yeah, it went up, so it's 20, but it's
But that's the
worth.
first step in any of this.
Yeah,
for
so,
sure.
just for sure.
Yeah,
One of our problems is that we're redesigning a house, so there's a roof that doesn't exist yet, and there's a roof that's going to have dormers put on it. So when we call solar companies, they'll say, what's your energy usage? And we say, well, we haven't lived in the house yet, and we don't have a roof yet. What should we do?
We have those all the time, and so we'll look at blueprints if we've got them, and I've got my professional designers, and we can size out a system. We can look at your historical usage, and then we can kind of estimate what we think it might be, and just go from that. You know, and Eversource will allow us to install the system from your historical usage, and then we could also add. He's adding an addition, and he has this, and you know, so we'll work with it. We try to figure out some midway point. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, we can estimate very closely, typically on a new home, what your consumption will be, and it really, you know, some of the determining factors are, you know, what kind of heating system, right? Are you doing geo, are you doing air source heat pump, ground source heat pump, conventional heating, you know, how many people in the home, you know, electric vehicles, hot tub, you know, actually those are more important than the actual size of the home, right? Square footage is kind of secondary. So.
Like, does the town get involved? Is there permitting and?
Yeah, I know.
All systems need to be permitted, right? We have to go through an entire process of filing an interconnection application with the utility company. So typically that's the first component. Once that's approved, then we move to a permitting process with the town.
But you handle all of that?
We do all of that, yeah. And then there's inspections.
We have a project manager that will handle all that.
How do we get in touch with you?
Yeah.
Sure, well, I'll leave you a card. I have cards.
Jim, I was just gonna ask you, how did you find the permitting process here? I know there were some challenges. but-
Yeah, so the only challenge that we ran into would be, it would have been much, the timeframe for our overall project would have been shorter to the extent that we weren't trying to load up as many panels on those back roofs, because there are setback requirements from the top of the roof line. The rationale is so firefighters can get up and down along the roofs without stepping on panels. So we were approved based on Connecticut law, and it didn't reconcile with the Westport law, but then it was all handled by PurePoint, and they worked it all out. But I would say that maybe added a month,
Yeah.
but it also might have been the first time the town ran into that, in my opinion. So perhaps next time it'd be more efficient.
You were probably right on the code. 9 months.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's right. Well, yeah.
The timeframe typically from contract to installation is at least 6 months, right? Usually around 6 months. And it can be longer. It really depends. The utility company is just a wild card, right? We can file an interconnection application and hear back in 3 weeks. Sometimes it's 3 months, right? And it's not like, you know, it's just a black hole. It's an email and a portal that you basically, you know, get information on, and you just, you know, there's no one to push and no one to talk to, so.
Yeah, I know you said the system is reliable, but just out of curiosity, let's say I have 50 panels and I lose 5 because a tree hits the house, and my manufacturer is gone. Are panels interchangeable from one manufacturer to another, so I can have 45 in a system, 5 from whoever happens to be in business at that moment?
So that really depends on what type of system you have, right? If you have a system with microinverters or optimizers, which are really the most popular, then the answer is yes, right? That you can typically swap any panel and just tie it into the existing system, right? As long as you're matching the optimizers or the microinverters for the most part. The problem with that is that panels are constantly changing, right? So if you have 50 panels that are even, you know, panels we were putting in a year ago are now obsolete, and they've changed in wattage or, you know, slightly in size or thickness. So it's very difficult to find a panel after years that actually matches what you have. I mean, it would be very obvious that it was a different panel, right? In those situations, sometimes we'll reconfigure the array, move panels around, and then maybe have like just one row, right, of different panels that are very similar. Maybe they're all black, right, but they're slightly different size. So, you know, just there's workarounds, but there's no perfect match typically.
It's a cosmetic issue more than it would be functional.
Correct.
In terms of the setbacks, I know you, Jim, you were saying from the ridge you have to allow for the fire department. What happens on the eaves and down at the?
I know it right now at the ridge. It's here in Connecticut. It's 1.5 feet, depending on the size of the system. It could be up to 3 feet. Just depends on how large the system is. Do we have to do anything on the sides right now?
It depends on whether the system is located on one side of the roof
Right.
or two sides, right? So if you're only on one side, then we have to be 18 inches down. If it's on both sides, then we have to be 3 feet down from the ridge on both sides and have actual paths up to the ridge.
Okay.
So
Even if it's accessible, but even if it's, let's say it's a cathedral ceiling in the room, they still need access to the roof.
yeah, I mean, the codes aren't that specific, right?
Yeah.
There is one caveat to that, like if it's a non-living space, like a detached garage or something you have, we don't need to do setbacks, we just load that up.
Oh.
So that's something that is unique.
Yeah, did you see something?
I saw someone over here.
Yeah, no, I just, a quick question on, you mentioned warranties, what's usually the typical warranty on this?
Solar panels are all pretty much 25 years across the board, and they have a graded warranty. So like for the first 10 years, it's at 90%, and then the next 15 years, it's like it goes down to 86%. Some panels, I think the RAC panel, they stay at 93% all the way to year 25. They're guaranteed that it will produce that amount of energy. The REC panel, the inverter, same 25 years across the board. The racking's 25 years. Pretty much it's all 25 years, and
But that's all in its production, like not if something breaks?
Well, if it breaks, if the panel breaks is due to like a natural disaster or anything like that, that would be homeowners insurance. We would fix it. They would cover it. But if the panel just stops working, and we'll know that from your app. We would just send out a truck and replace the panel. The panels almost never go out, but like the inverters do. So we replace the inverter, and that's all covered under warranty. In the back.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Hi, I have two questions. So I did research, and it was my understanding that if you put up a system and then 10 years later or 5 years later you want to add to it, that Eversource is not too compliant with that. That once you set your system, you're fixed with that system. Is that true?
They just changed that, so it got very sticky where people couldn't add, and if they wanted to add, it was this ridiculous set of rules where they had to do a whole no net metering, but that's done. They are now allowing you to install an additional system, and we're starting to do it a lot now. So yeah, you can install without any problem.
And then my second question, which is something I learned, so I just want to share. When I did my research on the internet, and I started to look at companies from the West Coast, particularly ones that started in the West Coast and moving to the East Coast, like Sunrun, there's all kinds of wacky things that were happening, what people were experiencing. But the thing that was most problematic is that people were putting in inverters, the standalone inverters, and they were some of the first things to go in the system. And then they couldn't get the parts for 2 to 3 months because they were out of.
I'm gonna let Chris talk. I agree on the Sunrun comment.
I always love customers who call and their first comment is that they've done their research. One of the things I find is that there's just so much information out there, it's overwhelming, right? So everyone comes to the table with bits and pieces of information, and it's like some of it's sales propaganda, some of it's outright lies, some of it's just completely inaccurate. It's just all over the place. But in terms of difficulty getting components, that was really a problem during COVID, right? And after COVID, all of that's eased considerably. We're really not seeing those difficulties anymore.
John, can you talk to the timeline that it took for Tesla to deliver that roof that you're doing in Norwalk right now?
It's somewhere around 6 to 8 weeks to get approvals, something like that.
Specifically though, on Tesla, how long it took for them to deliver the product?
It hasn't been delivered yet. The roof is being prepared for it. The installation date hasn't been set yet. So I don't have an answer. But it's a fairly long process.
It is.
The product is available though, and when your design is ready, it's available to ship.
Right
Except
away.
they haven't,
Excuse me?
except they haven't.
Yeah, how long have you been waiting, or how long is like since the?
With Lucid?
Well, Lucent Technology is the company that we're working with. The system is in the design phase right now. The technicians are gonna be sending out someone to prepare the roof, there's a roof membrane that goes under the panels. That's gonna happen when it thaws, everything thaws out. The system, I don't know exactly when the system will be installed. Scott is here. Scott, do we have a timeline on that?
So I signed a contract with the company in November, and we're waiting on Tesla still for the design.
Yeah.
I don't know if they gave it to them right away, so that's about 8 weeks. Still haven't heard from Tesla, but everything else is lined up, so when the Tesla's design comes through, I don't know exactly when that will happen. It should roll very fast, as long as the roof thaws out. So the rate limiting step is Tesla at this point.
Did you put
But we'll
Tesla
see.
batteries on it also, by the way?
I do eventually. And that's why I have another question, if I can just cut in.
Eventually, you have to.
Can you tell me exactly how your system shuts off when there's a power outage?
You guys probably know.
What is the technical engineering behind it?
How a system shuts off?
When there's a power outage?
When the grid falls.
Okay, well, all inverters have to meet a stringent UL.
So the inverter is cut off.
It's the inverter itself. The
From the
inverter
grid. If you weren't
actually.
on the grid,
Yeah.
if you
Well,
weren't on the grid,
there is no separation between a solar inverter and the grid, right? So if the inverter didn't shut off immediately when the grid power went out, it would be sending power back on the power line. So, up through the transformer and sending high voltage
no, I'm
back.
saying if you're off the grid, like your island.
Does the
Oh.
homeowner have to do anything?
No, if you're off the grid, you're off the grid. You're not connected to anything.
So it's the utility that shuts you off.
There's no utility. We cut the utility off.
No, I'm saying in a regular system.
Oh,
It's tied to the
There's a
grid.
cutoff shift.
There's a cutoff.
Yeah, if I can
Is
just
that
interject here.
illegal?
No, it's not illegal. No, there's
No,
a.
is it legal? Is it
Yeah.
Well, it has to be legal, yeah.
to cut you off?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, because the guy in the line trying to fix your power get fried.
So you can't separate yourself from the grid.
Unless you have battery backup, then you can disconnect.
If
No,
you
I think you're asking if you can take your house off grid?
That's what I was.
Right.
In your case,
So it sounds like with the
Battery.
battery, you're cut off.
you have a disconnect, it's a digital disconnect,
Okay.
disconnects you from the grid and keeps the worker
Okay.
safe on the line.
That's what I'm looking at, thank you.
Your house will have no separate
box. Again, you have to do 2 fuse
I have a
boxes.
question.
Sure. My generator
Do
kicks
you
in,
have any sense of
lives to that.
the effect of solar panels on the resale value of a house?
Well, I think we have some realtors here.
I would say, yeah, any energy saving, things that you can do to your home now, whether it's installing heat pumps, going geothermal, installing solar panels, absolutely. Yeah, because you're saving the homeowner, cost and energy costs, so, yeah, very definitely it adds.
Is it any way just to do a pool?
You mean, we used to do a lot of actual pool heating, like solar thermal, direct heating, which are very effective and relatively inexpensive. Need a lot of area. Need a fair amount of roof area, so, you would be taking that away from possibly, what's that? You still put it on the roof, correct?
John, what do you guys know, where do you think we are on optimization of kilowatt generation per panel? I've done 2 systems, one in '07 with John's help on my house, and I just put in '07, and I just put a new one on the house I'm in now in '23. There was sort of 225 kW at that time in '07, and now I heard you guys say 400. You think you're topped out there, or?
The panels are also physically larger too, right? So the dimension is different. But the percentages of efficiency have been creeping up, and the wattage of panels has been creeping up sort of incrementally year over year. You know, but realistically, it doesn't make that much difference, right? If your system is generating 100% of power, whether it's 13% efficient panels or 22% efficient panels, it's performing exactly the same. If you have enough space on your roof to put inefficient panels or less efficient panels, well, you know what? Actually, it's less expensive to do that than putting the most efficient panels. There's no performance gain per se in efficient panels versus lower efficient panels or less efficient panels, right? There's just, you know, you might just have a few extra panels to produce the same amount of power.
Yeah, but I think the question I have, and I've always had, is that if you've got a 10 by 10 area of a roof, and let's say right now it generates 1 kilowatt hour annually, I know it's stupid, but are we ever going to get to the situation where a 10 by 10 area is going to generate 5 times as much on the same surface area? I mean, that's always been my question. I don't think it's ever going to happen.
It's physics. But the rate of change is declining as per the technology, right? So you gave the example of 205 per panel?
225.
225. So yeah, I was looking, so my Maxions were 410 to 420, but that, yeah, but it's, so the rate of change is more stable, so.
Any last questions, guys? I know there's, okay, let's go.
And then we'll stick around if you want to chat too.
Sure, I'd first like to commend Jim for sacrificing your most optimal section of roof in the historic house. It's most visible from the street. It's the first time I've heard somebody
It happens
make
all the
that
time.
sacrifice. Is it true?
Yeah, my wife's in the back, that was her.
Though it's always the wife. It's always the wife's fault.
Blame me.
Don't want them on the front of the house.
No, I commend you for that. But my question has to do with going back to the financing versus outright purchase versus the power purchase arrangement. And we were talking about a 7 to 8 year payback on the system when you purchase.
Right.
And then I heard you say that the power purchase agreement usually works out to about 25 years. Is there any reason? I mean, do you pay, dramatically less for the power if you buy the power?
Purchasing the system, and I think when we talk about an 8 year payback, I've seen as low as 6 or 5, okay? But it all depends on the home. That has to do with, we're not talking about finance, interest. We're just talking about cash purchase. That's when you see a 7, 8 year. 25 years, you're really not owning the system. You're just, look at it like this. Instead of paying 32 cents a kilowatt to Eversource, you're paying 25 cents or whatever it is.
So it isn't that dramatically less?
No, you're saving, and sometimes it's almost like a bill swap. It's like you're paying 300 Eversource, you're paying 280 to the leasing company. It doesn't make all the sense in the world. Some people like them, and we don't even provide leases at Aegis. We just, it's not something we do, but there are companies that are offering.
And you get no benefit of the tax?
No benefits at all. No incentives, anything.
There are a lot of companies who really base their entire business model on leasing, right? And it's because it's more profitable than putting the system in, right? That's where they're all making. It's like, Ford Motor Credit, they make more money than the actual manufacturing and selling the cars, right? The credit finance makes more money. So these companies are making a tremendous amount of money leasing you a system and providing you with a small amount of savings, right? And we get calls all the time from customers throughout Connecticut, because they were sold on a lease that, we're going to own and operate it, and if anything goes wrong, we're going to fix it. And now they won't come back, right? The companies are either out of business, or even if they're in business, they won't come back. Even a year later, the companies are like, won't come back and fix the system. So it's a little nuts out there. I mean, honestly.
I think it's sufficient to say the biggest benefit of solar is the 30% tax credit. And if you own the system, you own that 30% tax credit. If you give it to a leasing company, they'll take that tax credit and run. So that's what
If you
you're
have
giving up.
taxable income and you've got the cash to buy or the access to the money, it's the best way to go. Overall system costs.
Yeah.
So let's just say 30,000, take 30% of that, that would be your tax credit that you receive back. Always on the overall system cost. That's federal.
One-off the tax credit, right? And the year during.
You can actually, they'll allow you to roll it out to 5 years. So like you can kick 30%, but let's say you wanted to take a portion of that or you don't qualify for all of it in 1 year, you could roll that out over 5 years.
Okay, but it's 30% just
The
one-off.
year, just one off,
basically.
yeah, unless it's a commercial, then you can depreciate, so, yeah.
I just want to wrap up, if we can just, we can
Ask
ask our
questions
questions
after, yeah.
individually when we're